G'day, my name's Stephen Phillips. I'm the head baker and pastry cook at Waltzing Kangaroo in Fort Collins, Colorado. And with everybody staying at home at the moment, we have had multiple requests for a really easy bread recipe from our customers that doesn't involve any specialized equipment. So no mixers, no proofing baskets, no yeast, no bread starters. Just something that anyone can make at home with 4 basic ingredients and some very basic utensils that most everyone has in the house. So the equipment that we're going to need today is a teaspoon, a measuring cup for flour, measuring cup for water, some kind of bowl to mix the bread dough in. Doesn't have to be like this, just some kind of container that you can mix the dough in. We're going to need something to proof the bread in. This just happens to be one that I have at home. It doesn't have to be like this, just anything that has a lid and is large enough to let the dough rise in. Even if you don't have a lid, you can always use another container similar to this and just put some plastic wrap on it. You're also going to need a little baking pan and some parchment paper or baking paper. In regards to ingredients, 4 ingredients. We need some bread flour. Has to be bread flour. We need some yeast. It doesn't matter if it's instant yeast or active yeast, they'll both work for this recipe. Some salt and of course some water. So let's get started. We're gonna get some water, warm water. Not cold, not hot. You stick your finger under it, you think it's too cold, it's too cold. If you think it's too hot, well guess what? It's too hot. So 2 cups of warm water. Now to that warm water, we're going to add 4 teaspoons of yeast. Now if you don't happen to have a jar of yeast, as you can tell, I make bread a lot, so I have quite a bit of it. But if you don't happen to have a jar of yeast, you can also use 2 packets of Teaspoons yeast, whether it's instant or active, doesn't matter. 4 teaspoons or 2 packets of yeast. Now I'm going to just give that a little bit of a stir. And just put that to the side for a minute. Now, while we wait for that yeast to dissolve a little or activate, I'm going to grab our container, I'm going to grab a little bit of pan or canola spray, doesn't matter. And we're going to spray this container. This is just to make sure that our bread dough, while proofing, doesn't stick. I'm going to put this to the side. Now let's give this yeast another stir. You can see it's starting to dissolve or activate. Perfect. Okay. Now, a mixing bowl. To that, we are going to add 4 level cups of flour. Again, as you can tell, I make a lot of bread. Most people, this bag's fine. So let's grab 4 level cups of flour. 1, 2, 3, and 4. A little under, a little over, you should be fine. Close it up. Put our measuring cup aside. We're going to give this yeast another stir. Looks looking beautiful. Now to the bread, to the flour, I should say, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt. Knock that in there. 1 and 2. Give the yeast another little bit of a stir. Now, making bread should always involve using your hands. So that salt flour. We're just going to give a little bit of a mix in there so it's well distributed through there. We're going to grab our water and yeast mix. We're going to pour that in. Now, get in there and use your hands. Don't be shy. Don't worry about getting grubby. And doing this helps you learn about the hydration percentage and the moisture of the bread that you're making. So we're going to mix this around. Pull all the bread dough, pull all the flour off the side. We're going to make a small bread dough. Now, this part's important. We've got to now mix this by hand just for 30 seconds to a minute, no more. We're just making sure we don't have any lumps of flour. So mix it around so it's well combined. All right, and that's enough. We're going to take this and we're going to put it into the container that we're going to proof this dough in. Just plop it in, that easy. I'm going to get the rest of the dough off the side of the bowl. I happen to have a bread scraper, makes it a little bit easier. Scrape that off the side. And drop it in. You don't need this anymore. Now a little pro tip for getting rid of wet dough off your hands. With this clean hand, we grab a little bit of flour. We're going to rub it in to our hand. And look at that, all that sticky bread dough just falls right off. Grab our scraper. We don't need this anymore. Throw that out. We're going to put the lid on here and we're going to let this rest. We're going to let it sit for 1 hour or until it's at least doubled in size. Half an hour. Our bread dough has actually tripled in size, and I know I said double, but that is the beauty of this recipe. There are going to be some little variances here and there depending on whether it's sea level, altitude, how humid your house is, etc. So as long as it's been proofing for 1 hour and it's at least doubled in size and no more than tripled in size, you're going to be fine. So the next step that we need to do before we knock this out, we're actually going to get our oven going. And I've already set my oven up. I have a rack in the middle of the oven, and I'm going to set my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, or for those using Celsius, 205, 200, 210, somewhere in there. Okay, so we've got that going. I'm going to grab our bread flour again, put that down on the bench. Dough. We're going to little tap. And out it comes. Ooh, that looks good. Just going to scrape this dough out of here, excess dough. Put that down on top, and we're going to respray our container. That's ready. A little bit more flour on top. And now we're going to fold this. Fold it over and over again. I'm going to fold it this way and again. Now, not too aggressively, we're just going to give a little tap. More flour. I'm going to fold it one more time, this way. Another time over. And we're going to fold it into thirds one more time. You can see how easy that came together. And we're going to tuck those edges under, and we're going to put it back in the container and we're gonna let it proof for another half an hour. Now, I should mention that I didn't before, I have left this on a wooden bench for that full hour of proofing, and I'm gonna leave it on this bench again for another half an hour. Just make sure that when your container is sitting on a surface, it isn't something cold, like marble or stone, just somewhere that the surface temperature is at the ambient temperature of the room, and you'll be fine. Our bread's been proofing for half an hour. Our oven is at temp, 400 degrees Fahrenheit, 205 degrees Celsius, and we're ready to knock this out, tray it up, and get it in the oven to bake. So what we need to do first, grab our flour again. We're just gonna add a real light sprinkle of flour to our baking pan. So it's ready to go. And dusting of flour to our bench. Open up this bread dough. Well, that looks good. We're just gonna flip it over. As you can see, it's gonna fall out nice and easy. Now I like to flip my dough. And the reason I do that is that the folds I put in it before aren't gonna open up when it's baking. So moving quickly, we're just gonna lay it down. You're gonna shape it a little bit to the shape of the pan. You don't have to do this if you don't want. I just like to, a little neat. You're gonna even the bread dough out just that little bit, be gentle. We do not wanna knock the air out of this dough. All right, shape of our pan. Oh, little dusting of flour on top again. Not too much, you don't want to have a floury bite of bread when it's done. And this one's ready to go in the oven. Okay, bread's ready for the oven. Now the one extra secret and trick to get a really good crust on bread and replicate bread that you're going to get in a bakery is to put some water directly into the oven. I have a third of a cup of hot water here. Now once we put this bread dough in, we're going to throw this water in carefully, and then we're going to close the door really quick, but that's going to provide the steam and give us that extra kick on the dough. So into the middle rack, a cup of water, and close the door. Now we're going to bake this, as I mentioned before, 400 Fahrenheit, 205 Celsius for 25 minutes. And then rotate it and give it another 25. All right, so our bread's been baking for 50 minutes. All we have to do now is pull it out of the oven, cool it down, and let's see how we go. Oh, it looks fantastic. Here we go. Beautiful color. Nice crust. All we have to do now, let it rest, let it cool before we can cut it open and see how we've done. So our bread is now cooled. Let's have a little bit more of a closer look at it. As I said before, we've got a nice crust. It's not overly cooked, it's not burnt. It's a crust that our kids are going to enjoy. They don't like things that are overcooked and too dark. They find it too chewy. So this is like a perfect balance that everyone's going to enjoy. So let's open it up. Sorry, slice it and have a look. Now in our house, the first slice always gets reserved for butter and Vegemite. And in all truthfulness, it's really the first two slices. So, oh gosh, that sounds good. And let's have a look at this third one here. Now, as you can see, I'm also sawing the bread. I'm not pushing down, letting the knife do the work. Now let's have a look. Nice and soft. Got great cell structure. Nice and moist. Crust is not overly cooked. And that is a great piece of bread. So it's that easy. Simple ingredients: flour, water, salt, yeast. simple equipment. Anyone can make it at home. It doesn't take too long. And get baking and let us know how you go.